Hello there, and welcome to episode 7 of the Unqualified Opinions podcast. I'm your host, as always, Marco Yerkovich. Joining me on today's episode is Will Byerman.
So we look at the fan mailbag and we see John S. says bowling is for the poor. Well, interesting take, man, eh?
And Tim Seipel.
What's groovin'?
All right, on today's episode, we will be discussing the NCAA now allowing players to profit off their likeness, the NFL MVP race, takeaways from the first week of NBA action, and much, much more. But before we begin, please remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video for more content.
We got a channel now.
Yes, we do, and we're popular. Just throwing all the videos on there all at once. All right, so let's get right into it with the first topic of the day. The NCAA is now at least putting forward legislation to allow players to profit from their likeness. Your guys' thoughts on this huge paradigm-shifting legislation in sports?
Ben, if you're listening to this, send me the PS4 because we play in NCAA 20 next year. It's
yeah, we
fun.
are.
But on a more serious note, I really go back and forth on this issue all the time. On the one hand, you're getting free school, and there's a lot of other perks that people don't talk about as much. But on the other hand, considering the sheer amount of money the NCAA makes, I'm really on the fence here. I can see really compelling arguments for both sides, but generally I feel pretty good about it. I'm glad that they've made this deal happen, and especially because with California passing it and no one else doing it, if that had happened, the NCAA would have been in a whole lot of trouble. But on the other hand, USC and Stanford and schools like that might have actually been good at football for once, but a little lose some, gain some.
Yeah, I think it's not clear what exactly this will do to the college landscape. I don't know what exactly the effects of this will be. It's kind of hard to predict. I know Tim Tebow talked about the competition level and how this will just make it feel more like professional football. And there is something special about college football. There's the environment, the organizations. There's just something different about it. So I don't know if that will change in any form, but I do think to a certain extent that this is a good thing because it took too long and there was so much money made from the NCAA off of young college players' likenesses.
Yeah, I think this is overall a net positive for the players and the NCAA because now we're actually going to have transparency. We all know that things like this have been happening for a long time, but now it can be out in the open. The players can have their own brands. Now, we know this isn't going to affect the, this really won't affect the women's tennis player or the men's golf player, but football players from major universities, prominent players, basketball players from prominent universities, and volleyball.
Come on,
and
basketball
baseball
players from prominent universities are making plenty of money already, Marco. Shout out to the FBI.
Marco.
Well, now, again, I said transparency is what's important in this situation. Now, obviously, this is a very small population of players that will benefit from this, but the players that do, obviously, this is just overall a better situation and way of handling something like this. So I think, you're going to have guys like Tua Tagovailoa, Trevor Lawrence, who can be selling jerseys and shirts and merchandise, not the offensive lineman from a Division III football school, but guys like that is what this bill is more geared toward.
Right, yeah, exactly. I think the people that have more ground in the social media game will be the people that will be able to capitalize off of this new rule.
All right, so we're going to quick shift to our second topic of the day, the NFL MVP race. So we each have a top three that we're going to discuss. Let's just go around for our top threes and then our second and then our first place. So in third, I have a tie right now. I have Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey, probably the two most prolific running backs in the NFL right now. So that's why I have it third. They lead the NFL both first and second in pretty much every rushing category.
Yeah, so right now I actually have Christian McCaffrey as well, and for three reasons. First of all, 4.8 yards per carry. That is insanely good, especially in the NFL. When you're looking at 5 yards per carry as a running back, you're about as effective as it gets. And then also 10 touchdowns and 0 fumbles. He's not dropping the ball. He's not losing it at all. And he's scoring really, really effectively. And then lastly, 1,078 total yards. That's just ungodly. In 8 games, that's insane. And he's going to have a big, big year.
Yeah, I know I sent you guys that graphic about just his overall, not only his rushing numbers, but his receiving numbers are just ridiculous. Okay, so Will, who do you have in third in the MVP race?
He may have missed a couple games now, but I'm going to keep Patrick Mahomes in the top 3 there. And if we just look at his stats from the few games he's played so far, in 7 games, 65% completion, 2,180 yards passing, 15 touchdowns. I mean, it's Mahomes too, so like, even if he misses a few more games, he's going to come really close to beating the next guy, the next best quarterback's passing stats. He's definitely going to be up there. A little dark horse shout-out action is I love that Dalvin Cook pick. I'll give a little shout-out to Aaron Rodgers for what he's doing, and also as NFL Network has pointed out, Matthew Stafford is quietly having a monster year.
Yeah, so second, I have Russell Wilson. I think overall he's probably one of the most consistent quarterbacks of our age. But overall, I mean, he's just ridiculous. 68% passing completion percentage, over 2,000 yards passing, 17 touchdowns. So overall, just a really solid year from Russell Wilson. And the team overall is doing better than they have in the past few years.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with the baddest man on earth, the Aaron Rodgers at number 2. He's got 16 touchdowns and 2 interceptions for an 8-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, a 2,324 yards passing, along with a 106.7 quarterback rating on 65.4% completions. He's a bad man, and he's really come out of his shell these past 2 games, and it's going to be exciting to see how well he does throughout the rest of the season under Matt LaFleur's new system.
All right, Will, who do you have second in your race?
I have him a little higher than you guys, but Christian McCaffrey's my number 2 guy. As Tim said, averaging almost 4 yards a carry, but
almost 5 yards a carry.
He is a pure workhorse back, dynamic, incredible wide receiver, or not wide receiver, but receiving threat in general. He's combining these 2 positions, these 2 skills, in ways that no one's ever done before. And we've had some great pass-catching backs, James White, Danny Woodhead, shout out, come to mind. Obviously, tons of great guys who rush, but McCaffrey, I think, combines them better than anyone else I've ever seen do it. And he's really making a big impact for the Panthers. I think he deserves to be a little higher in MVP consideration.
All right, so yeah, in first, I have the bad man himself, Aaron Rodgers.
Let's go, baby!
You know, the defense hasn't been quite there, but he has really lifted this offense to a pretty legitimate level. They're definitely a top 5 offense, and Aaron Rodgers, now we know he's an elite quarterback, but as we've seen with all those all-time quarterbacks, Drew Brees and Tom Brady are still great, but after about that 37, 38-year season, things start to decline physically, but, you know, those guys are obviously still, you know, really elite quarterbacks, but Aaron Rodgers is making the most of these these last few years of just true elite athleticism, and he is definitely my number 1 right now.
Yeah, to add on to that, having his 2 best games the past 2 games without his number 1 receiver in Davante Adams. I think that is just shows the amount of talent he has and the ability to cover more ground with maybe less talented receivers. So right now, in my number 1, I have Russell Wilson. Currently, he has a 17-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, which is insanely efficient, along with 2,127 passing yards, 68.4% completions, and a quarterback rating of 115.5. He's just been getting the job done consistently and has been about as good as it gets.
All right, Will, who do you have at number 1?
I have to agree with Tim on this one. And he brought up all the stats, so I'll just kind of stick to some more intangible stuff. Packers, may not have the best wide receiving group with Davante Adams out, but they have Aaron Jones. They have Davante Adams when he's healthy. They have pieces. You can argue a lesser quarterback could make something, not to the extent of Rodgers certainly, but could make something happen with that group. Russell Wilson is the Seahawks right now. And another factor there, too, is there's not as much as in the NBA, but there's always a certain amount of name value that comes being an MVP candidate. And Wilson, when you hear Russell Wilson, MVP frontrunner, you're like, I kind of forgot he was an MVP candidate, which he pretty much is every year. But it sounds about right. He's had a great season. He's always been in the mix. I think it's his time this year.
All right, so with that, we're going to move on to our next topic, which is our weekly power rankings for Week 8 of the NFL season. So at number 10, I have the Houston Texans. Obviously, they're a bit battered up, especially now this J.J. Watt injury. He could be out for the season, so that definitely is a huge hit for them. But Deshaun Watson has still been absolutely phenomenal this season. As we've mentioned before, he's gotten more and more time this season and really made the most of it. At 9, I have the Buffalo Bills. A tough, pretty bad loss to the Eagles. That was, just their second or third true test of the season. So we'll see if they can bounce back from that. They're a young team, a really solid defense, but it is yet to see what Josh Allen can really do from a production standpoint against any legitimate opponents. At 8, I have the Indianapolis Colts. No one thought they would be here after losing Andrew Luck, but they have continued to fight. And Jacoby Brissett has really had a quite impressive year to this point. 7, I have the Vikings. They're really solid against subpar opponents, but when it comes to playing anyone elite, they shrivel up. But we'll just have to see if Kirk Cousins can keep this rhythm going. This offense and this defense have some of the best position groups in the league. At 6, I have the Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, we talked about Russell Wilson, but Chris Carson, the running back, and overall, just as a team culture that Pete Carroll builds every year, a solid Seattle team. 5, I have the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson is one of those guys you could even consider a dark horse MVP candidate, possibly. Just a really solid, hit-you-in-the-mouth kind of team. They traded a couple weeks ago for Marcus Peters. The passing defense has improved immensely. 4, I've got the Green Bay Packers, as we talked about a lot. The defense isn't quite where they want it to be, and obviously the injury to Devontae Adams, but overall the offense is firing on all cylinders. And then this top 3 that I think have really supplanted themselves above the rest of the field, at least at this moment. 3, I've got the Saints. Drew Brees looked pretty phenomenal in his return. Granted, he was playing the Cardinals, but overall a great return from injury for him. 2, I actually have the 49ers. So last week I put the Saints over the 49ers. Now the 49ers are back up at 2. One of the most ridiculous performances defensively and offensively, to be quite honest, that I've seen in a long time in a regular season game that had quite a lot of importance. So the 49ers up to 2. And then the Patriots absolutely dismantling and embarrassing the Cleveland Browns. So they remain number 1 as they have been all season. Your guys' thoughts on the power rankings?
If dismantling the Cleveland Browns makes you the second best team in the league, then everyone involved in the Cleveland Browns in the last 2 decades is number 2 in the league, first of all. But no, I got to agree with most of that. I don't know if I'd have the Bills in the top 10 still. For me, they're always a team. They're tough. They're gritty. I like them, but for me, they're always a team that was had novelty in the top 10 as long as they were a one-loss team. And the Eagles haven't looked particularly great for many stretches of the season. I don't think I'd have them top 10 anymore. I like moving the Niners up. Obviously, I've had a lot of bad stuff to say about them at the start of the season, but they've really impressed me. I do think they have some staying power now. And I like having the Ravens moving up higher. I was really high on them at the start of the season and think they're going to keep going up.
All right, Tim, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the Texans have found not a new weapon, but a weapon that has become a little bit reliable in Darren Fells. I think 2 touchdowns. I think he's had 2 games this year where he's had 2 touchdowns. So he's a real target that Deshaun Watson can go to outside of DeAndre Hopkins. With the Bills, I think it's kind of interesting that the Bills have gotten to the 9th spot the same way that the Patriots have gotten to the number 1 spot, and that is playing a horrible schedule. The reason why the Bills have done so well is because of their defense, but it's also because their schedule has not been very difficult, and you can tell, especially with the Patriots, it's been the same way.
Yeah, the Patriots and the 49ers have had amongst the easiest schedules in the league, but we will see these teams will get tested here in the future. The Patriots, within the next 5 to 6 weeks, I think they face the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Ravens, and I believe a few other really challenging teams. So, these teams will be tested here really soon. And again, we're only halfway through the season, so we're still trying to figure out who can beat who's better than who on, which game, which Sunday. So, these are still kind of in flux, but I still think that top 3 is kind of higher up than the rest of the field.
For sure. And then I'd like to go to the Ravens. I'm really liking them at the number 5 spot, and I think it's going to be a really, really good game on Sunday night. I think we might see an upset on Sunday night versus the Patriots, so just a hint for that later on today. And then my last comment is for the San Francisco 49ers. They're facing some tough teams in the next couple games. They're going to have the Seahawks, Packers, Ravens, Saints, and the Seahawks again. So I think we're really going to see what the 49ers team is made of, and especially the defense, whether or not they'll be able to compete at the same level the second half of this season.
All right, with that, we're going to move on to our second to last topic of the episode. So we're just going to quickly do some takeaways from the first week of NBA action. So your guys' overall thoughts, anything you want to touch on in particular?
For one, I've been really impressed by the Nuggets so far. We talked about them a bit in the first little NBA segment we did, but Jokic really looks like he could potentially average a triple-double. Speaking of those, Luka Doncic, my man, and Kristaps Porzingis, my other man, really tearing it up for the Mavericks. But the most impressive thing about the Mavericks for me is because they're always a fringe playoff team with their current roster, because the questions weren't about their 2 stars, it's about the role players. They beat the Nuggets, an elite West Conference team, last night, with Porzingis scoring 10, Luka scoring 12, but 9 players scoring in double digits.
Yeah, I think Maxi Kleber was their leading scorer with 14.
Maxi Kleber, first of all, is one of the most underrated defenders in the league. But secondly, yeah, that's 9 scores, putting up double digits. You want to see that from your role players. They did a good job with that win. Clippers are looking as good as advertised. Biggest surprise, I know it's early, but the Phoenix Suns,
the Los Angeles
I don't think they're making the playoffs.
But no longer have DeAndre Ayton for 25 games, I believe.
And Aaron Baines hit 3 threes in that game. So the Suns, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but they're doing something right. And again, they're the Suns. I don't really think I trust them to make the playoffs, but they make you wonder this year. It's pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, I definitely think the Suns are on the right track. They're not on the track yet. They're not on the spot to go to the to the playoffs per se, but they are definitely working towards getting to the playoff spot. The biggest team that I'm seeing today is the Mavericks. I'm really loving what they're doing, and I really love the pickups that they got with Seth Curry, Boban, and also picking up Kristaps last season in a trade. I just think that they are set, and I think Mark Cuban has done a great job for a long time with the Mavericks, and he's just building another powerhouse team without Dirk Nowitzki.
So yeah, overall, I think the Mavericks are probably the most surprising team. I mean, not surprising as in they did have a lot of talent, but just the way it is blended together so quickly. And then, of course, the Clippers, the Lakers are playing really well, the Timberwolves. The Thunder have actually played some pretty solid games overall, and the Rockets have looked a bit shaky, but what is going on with the Warriors, Will?
Boy. I mean, you can't sleep on Steph Curry, and I don't think they're going to be this bad all season.
It's early.
I think they're going to turn around,
but early.
For the present, I think it's not a terrible assumption to say Steph Curry currently looks like a man who is he's had a ton of talent, or at least veteran experience around him for the last couple of years, and now there's none. Like, aside from Draymond, the injured Klay Thompson, and Steph, who, of course, one of the great players to ever play the game, there's not much left in that roster. Marquise Chris.
Yeah, there's a lot to adjust to. I think we take for granted the chemistry on a basketball court that occurs, when things like that change.
Yeah, and I think one thing that the Warriors are really missing out on is Sean Livingston's experience and his leadership.
And Iguodala's. I mean, honestly, their bench is completely stripped of anything resembling last season.
Just to touch on a few more basketball takes before we move on. Pascal Siakam, I wondered how he would handle being the guy. So far, very well. The 76ers, Ben Simmons is always going to hamper them a bit with his lack of three-point shooting, but boy, they're so big and so tough on defense. It's going to be really difficult to get anything past them this year. And also, speaking of Dirk Nowitzki, my all-time idol, by the way, Tim, they just named a street after him today in Dallas.
Not surprised.
Legend.
Interesting. Okay, so with
they
that...
They should name more than a street after him. They should name the arena after him.
Well, that's not how NBA stadium and arena rights work, unfortunately. But with that, we're going to move on to our final topic of the day, our weekly pick'em. So before we get into that, we're just going to run over the quick standings. So Paul leading the way at 23-10. He was 3-2 last week. Will at 17-11. Last week he was 4-1. Myself, I was 20-13, 3-2 last week. Jared 18-15, 3-2 last week. And Tim climbing above 500. He's 11-10, 4-1 last week. Okay, so our first game of the week. Number 8, Georgia at number 6, Florida. Saturday, 2:30 on CBS. Will, who do you have in that one?
It's a tough one because, again, Florida's a team a couple weeks ago. We talked about these SEC teams, specifically LSU, Georgia, and Florida, how Alabama's there, but there's typically room in the playoff picture for another SEC team. Now, with Ohio State and Oklahoma, and even Penn State to an extent, that's a little murkier. But I mean, LSU's taking a big jump. If Florida or Georgia, if either of them want to have a prayer of remaining in the playoff conversations, they got to win this game. This is a must-win game for both teams, and I know it didn't really work out well last time I picked him, but I really still do believe in Jake Fromm, and I think Georgia's going to win.
All right, Paul, who do you have in this one?
So when I see two one-loss teams in a matchup, I usually take a look at how they lost. Florida lost a close, hard-fought game in the fourth quarter to LSU on the road. Georgia's loss was at home to South Carolina. I mean, just that alone makes me want to pick Florida until I see it's in Jacksonville, and then I definitely want to pick Florida. I'm going with the Gators.
Okay, so Tim, who do you have in this one?
Yeah, I think when you look at the losses, Georgia losing to South Carolina really shows that there are a lot of weaknesses to the Georgia team, and Florida losing a hard-fought game against the LSU Tigers just really shows that Florida has a very, very good team, and I think that they're going to beat Georgia, so I'm going to have to go with Florida as well.
All right, Jared, who do you have in this one?
I'm going to go with Will here and go with Georgia. I mean, I have to go with Georgia. I mean, I just have more faith in Jake Fromm than I do with Trask for Florida, so got to go with the Bulldogs in this one.
So kind of going off of what Paul said, if you look at how these teams lost, and especially how they've played since they've lost, and then also there's some comparative matchups you can make, how Florida beat South Carolina versus how Georgia lost to them, of course, but then also just how poorly Georgia played against a really beat-up injured Kentucky team. So with that in mind, I'm going to have to go with Florida on this one. Hopefully it doesn't bite me, but I'm going to go with Florida beating the Dogs in Jacksonville. So our second matchup is actually the game day matchup. Number 15 SMU at 24 Memphis, Saturday 6:30 on ABC. Will, who do you have in that one?
First of all, I'm super excited to see one of these less talked about matchups on here. Love seeing it, and this is a really exciting game for me. I love watching both these teams play, but I love what SMU does. I love watching them play football. They've had some cool uniform combinations. They got cool turf. They're one of the most aesthetically pleasing teams for me to watch this year. And Shane Buechele, I mean, I know probably I think the one way people can see my college football knowledge isn't as strong as Jared or Paul's is I do tend to typically kind of rely upon strength of a strong quarterback, and I guess I'll just stick with that this time because Shane Buechele's worked wonders for this program. He lost out at Texas, but he's at SMU now. Memphis is really good, but they already have one loss in conference, and I think SMU is too strong for them.
All right, Paul, who do you have in this one?
Yeah, so once again, I think having these lesser talked about matchups is really something we should continue to do here in the season. And SMU is 8-0 for the first time in how long? I mean,
Since I believe 1982.
yeah, it's been a while since they've been ranked even. So I think Memphis, it's usually that typical team that'll win probably one big game but then lose 2 or 3 that they probably shouldn't. This could be that big game, but I'm just going to go with SMU because they've been impressive with that win over TCU.
All right. Tim, who do you have in this one?
I think I'm going to go with a different trend. I think I'm going to actually go with the Memphis because I personally think that Brady White has been pretty good. And I mean, with 20 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, he's been pretty efficient for the most part. And I just feel like the Memphis defense will show up against SMU as well.
That's an upset alert right there. That's also Tim trying to climb his way back up in the rankings, picking a different team.
Yeah, it is.
All right, Jared, who do you have in this one?
I'm going to correct you. It's really not an upset because Memphis is actually a 6-point favorite.
Really?
Yes.
Well, SMU is up 9 spots in the rankings. So, I mean, what do you decide is an upset?
What can you say?
All right.
But I'm going to first talk about how this is 2 straight weeks. I mean, last week, 2 FCS opponents got game day in South Dakota State and North Dakota State. And this week, it's 2 American teams beating out teams like Florida and Georgia for that game day spot. So I think it's cool that game day is giving these smaller schools and lesser schools talked about more time and prime time and more talked about. I think it's really cool. But yeah, I'm going to have to go with SMU as well. I mean, Buechele has been pretty awesome this year, and I got to go with SMU.
All right, so that's it for our college football picks. Let's move on to our NFL picks. Yeah, I have to make a pick. Well, it's going to be SMU for a lot of the factors
No, it
that
isn't.
Paul talked about. I'm going to have to go with the Mustangs
Tigers.
on that one. Hey, you might be right.
Marco
So,
just seems rushed and confused right now. He wasn't ready for this. He was trying to slip past us here.
I totally forgot to make my pick. But yeah, anyway, to the NFL picks we go. We've got the Minnesota Vikings at the Kansas City Chiefs Sunday at noon on Fox.
I personally believe that the Vikings and Kirk Cousins will not show up against the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think Patrick Mahomes will definitely take the Vikings defense for a ride, and it will be the Chiefs over the Vikings.
All right, Will, who do you have in this one?
It's a really interesting game for me because you have 2 teams that aren't winning as many games as they should. Chiefs because of injury of Patrick Mahomes, but even before that, just they're looking a little off. And then the Vikings, who are looking a little on after looking a little off. So it's a really unpredictable matchup because both these teams have both looked like the best in the league, at least talent-wise at times, but have both managed to lose some games. It's a tough one, but I think I'm going to have to go with the Chiefs on this one. I believe in them a little more, and I believe in the Vikings much less than pretty much every other team in the league right now. They're struggling.
It's easy to look efficient when you aren't playing good defenses.
All right, Paul, who do you have in this one?
Yeah, so what my big thing with matchups is common opponents. One common opponent between these 2 teams is the Green Bay Packers. We saw the Chiefs go up against them last week, and it was close all the way up until about 8 minutes left. I think if they have Patrick Mahomes, that's a closer game. They might be able to go down and score on the last couple of drives. But with Matt Moore, they weren't able to. And I'm pretty sure the Packers beat the Vikings earlier this season. So for that reason, I think the Chiefs are going to win this. They're at home. Not the best record at home, but I think they get the win here.
All right, Jared, who do you have in this matchup?
Well, if my percentage on NFL tells me nothing, I don't know
Under
much about
20%,
pro sports.
I believe.
I think it's up to 23% now, by the way.
Wow, okay.
I know. But I'm going to go with the Vikings here. I mean, let's go with Kirk Cousins, let's see him have a great game because why not?
See, now that you've gone there, I'm afraid to go there, but I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to go with the Vikings. This Chiefs defense is ridiculously bad at stopping the run.
They're 5th at sacks.
I said stopping the run, and Dalvin Cook is 2nd in the league in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. So I think Dalvin Cook is going to have a heck of a night.
Dalvin Cook can't make up for Kirk Cousins' mediocre gameplay.
Well, I guess we'll just have to see because the Kansas City Chiefs are not known for defense. So we're going to move on to our final pick of the day and of the episode. A first-time appearance here on Unqualified Opinions, rugby.
It's about time, boys. Let's go.
So we've got England against South Africa in the Rugby World Cup final. That's going to be Saturday at 4 a.m. Central Time. I don't even know what website or streaming service you can find it on.
NBC Sports Network. It's going to be a good one.
Okay, so my pick for that one, I'm going to have to go with England. Not exactly a rugby expert here, but from what I've read and we've all read, it seems like England might be the favorite here, so we're going to go with that one. Jared, who do you have in this one?
I know absolutely nothing about rugby, so just for the fact of that, let's go with South Africa. I mean, I love South Africa. Let's just go with them.
All right, Tim.
I think England is going to break down and not have any composure and won't be as disciplined as South Africa. So I think South Africa will take it.
All right, Paul, who do you have in this one?
Yeah, I'm with Jared on this one. Love the sport of rugby, but I don't follow it whatsoever. I see that England has a draw, so I'm going to go with South Africa.
All right, Will?
As someone who knows the sport of rugby a little better than these fellows, in fact, check out UNL Rugby 15s and 7s whenever you good people get the chance to. But this is quite the match. This is one of the best matchups I personally could have hoped for. Would have liked to see the All Blacks instead of England, but look.
That's true.
England has a ton of talent. They have Maro Itaje. He's one of the best forwards in the game. Tom Curry's a tremendous back. And obviously Owen Farrell's probably been the best player in the whole tournament, except maybe Bowden Barrett so far. And Farrell's really set the tone for England. At the start of the season, ESPN said this team will go as far as Owen Farrell's willing to take them. But I'm going to take my guys from South Africa on this one. Faf de Klerk is the best scrum half in the world. Cheslin Colby and Mapimpi are fantastic wings. They're so strong and fast. And, of course, you got Malcolm Marks in the middle for the forwards. It's going to be a physical game, and I think South Africa's here for it. Springboks are going to win this one.
That's
All
what
right.
I said.
So now with our Game of the Week pick, we've got the New England Patriots at the Baltimore Ravens, Sunday, 7:15 on NBC. Will, who do you have in this big-time AFC matchup?
Well, as an outspoken critic of Marko Jurkovic, I'm going to have to take Baltimore here. But for more serious reasons, though, Patriots have not been tested yet so far. If they win this is going to be like pretty much their only super solid win of the
Outside
entire
of the Bills, yeah.
Outside of the Bills, and again, the Bills are a little iffy anyway. But I mean, this is a tough team, and the more interesting thing is this is an improving team. They added Marcus Peters. They've had more time with him. This Baltimore Ravens team is going to be playing a different way than they have all season, and I'm not confident in New England Patriots defense. They haven't really had to defend, and even their one good game against the Bills, love Josh Allen, but he's not going to light you up in the air that often. So I'm going to take Lamar, take the Ravens.
All right, Paul, who do you have in this matchup?
All right, so once again, the common opponents.
What's new?
Last week, the Patriots beat the Browns by 14. Earlier this season, the Browns beat the Ravens by 15. So you're thinking, okay, I'm going with the Patriots here. But as we've discussed a lot on air and off air in this group, the Patriots arguably the easiest schedule to this point in the season. This is going to be their first test, and it's at Baltimore. I'm going with the Ravens, and I think this will be that game where everyone starts to freak out and, oh, are the Patriots not going to make the playoffs? Look, they'll make the playoffs. All right, they do this every year. They win just enough games to get to the playoffs, and then they all of a sudden flip the switch and go to the Super Bowl.
All right, Tim, who do you have in this one?
So I think the big matchup for me is not exactly the two teams, but it's going to be the Patriots offense versus the Ravens defense. It's going to be interesting to see how the Patriots offense does against a top defense in the league, because they haven't really faced any type of defense during the whole season. So I'm going to actually have to go with the Ravens as well. And I think the defense of the Patriots will also face a much more versatile offense and more efficient offense that they have ever faced. And I think this will be the game where the Patriots come down to earth and look a little bit more mortal.
Okay, Jared, who do you have in this one?
You're going to like me, Marco, because I'm going with the Patriots. Now
You're cursed now. He's at 23%.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but
23%.
We got him, boys.
I'd pick the Ravens if Jared picked the Patriots.
Shots fired at my location.
I mean, I'm pretty much just going off this because, they're a 3-point favorite. So, but I think Patriots going to win this game pretty easily. I think it's going to be a 2-touchdown game.
All right, I have to agree with you on that one, Jared. Just if we're looking at the other side of the ball, I think against probably the best secondary, definitely the best secondary in the league, and the best secondary since the Legion of Boom, the Patriots, Lamar Jackson and his his wild play style. He's going to have a multi-interception game. I do think the Patriots are going to struggle to move the ball against Baltimore, but they're going to get it done when they need to. Rex Burkhead came off IR last week. He's going to get far more involved in this matchup. And overall, I think the Patriots are just going to have a lot better game than they did against the Browns. So I'll pick the Patriots in that one. So thank you so much for joining us for episode 7 of the Unqualified Opinion Sports Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe on this video and on the channel. Thank you so much, and we will see you guys next time.